Hello, welcome back to the next episode of Recipe to Revenue. I'm here today with Walt Clements, the CEO and founder of Meta Wine. Meta Wine is at the forefront of innovation in the wine industry, so I'm so excited to have him here today to share what they're doing at Meta Wine. And seriously, talk about a creative company. Walt and I have had lots of talks back and forth the last couple of weeks about what they're doing, and I was so impressed that I had to have him on and let him share everything that's going on behind the scenes. It's really cool company. Walt, thank you so much for being here today and getting a chance to share your story.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here, and there are plenty of stories. We'll try to keep it to less than 8 hours.
Perfect. Otherwise, we'll just do a series of videos with you. All right, let's just start. Give a little introduction. Tell us about yourself, Meta Wine. How did it all come to be?
Well, Meta Wine's a new kind of wine company in the United States. We're based on a European model. My wife is from Italy, and when I used to go visit her there before she moved here, the first time I went, I arrived New Year's Eve day, and we went to a shop where you filled up large vessels with wine from a gas pump from these big tanks, and that was what we had for the party that night. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. I guess they buy growlers of wine in Italy. Who knew?
Yeah.
And that was the initial experience with that. And I was doing something else in the software business. Now I'm in a different kind of software business, much better. And so I just would go back there and learn more about wine. I didn't know too much about wine in general, but liked it and appreciated it. And I'm an environmentalist, and I like the fact that you could reuse a package. Learn that if you don't drop a wine bottle on the ground, it'll last 4,000 years. Right. So I don't know why we throw them out all the time, but that was the genesis. And then I came back and I got the entrepreneurial bug, starting some software companies, and just realized that I wasn't doing I wasn't like happy and probably might not end up being successful. And I thought, I'm just going to do that weird wine business in Italy where they fill up growlers of wine, and I'll serve some food because I like cooking food. And along the way realized that the wine business versus restaurant business, which one's riskier, which one's harder, and which one's a double move. So I chose wine, didn't go the restaurant approach. And along the way, just started learning about wine. I didn't know about the 3-tier system. I didn't know much about the product itself, didn't know about the compliance. And so from that outsider perspective, I tell people that I have no business being in this business. And that's actually been an unfair advantage to us because I'm a learner and I enjoy research and I enjoy exploration and creativity. And so I just kind of pieced together this wine business the way I thought it should be pieced together. And along the way, I had plenty of people say, oh, you can't do that, or that's stupid, or nobody's going to want to buy your wine. And but in some ways, kind of like, and I don't compare myself to Elon Musk, but when he describes how he started SpaceX and sort of penciled out, why is it that NASA pays so much for rocket ships? And he penciled it out and figured he could make a rocket ship for 10% of the price. Similar sort of outsider perspective and outsider approach is how I came upon this. And, paid attention all along the way. I've never had an original idea in my life. I just ripped everyone else off and put them all together in a novel way, and just paid attention to some different opportunities in the trade and found some very efficient slipstreams into market. So what we do is we're based here in Chicago, so we don't make wine from Chicago grapes. I'm sure it's possible, but I'm not sure that's even close to a good idea. Yeah, we work with a network of winemakers around the world who make wine in the regions where the grapes are fresh and the juice is fresh. And we import the wine in a sustainable way where we cut our shipping costs and carbon footprint by more than half. And then we bring wine to market in flexible ways that are highly sustainable, highly economical, and focus on the fastest growing, least risky, highest margin aspects of the wine trade. Right now, that's focused on doing private label programs for hospitality groups. Even big hospitality groups don't have the ability, the economics don't support their doing a private label program where if they're bringing wine in from the West Coast, they've got to take a shipping container and they just can't have all that cash tied up in inventory. So when we bring the wine into Chicago, put it right back into tank and enable them to do private label programs with low order minimums and short order lead time, that is a very efficient approach to market that they appreciate. And private label programs are something that a lot of businesses, a lot of food and beverage categories are trying to get into. We just enable that for these big hospitality groups and in a very creative and flexible way.
Yeah. So the the white label part of the wine business you have. Tell us about how you got that part started. Since you created this network of wineries throughout Europe, now you're importing all this wine here. How did you tie in the hospitality piece and get those relationships going?
Yeah, we work with tons of wineries on the West Coast and Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and we're not strong at this point in the Southern Hemisphere, but that's going to change because it's
Yeah.
nice and warm down there in January, and it's not warm here in January. Um,
Chicago, not warm in January?
I know, shocker. It's even worse in February, and then by March, you're like, is the joke please over?
Yeah.
And it's not.
Perfect
So I
time for a
not
nice trip to Argentina.
exactly just what I'm thinking, and so it just kind of came well, our DNA at the time when I was doing all this research, wine on tap was in a very early phase.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an environmentalist. I'm a tree hugger. I just don't have time to hug trees because my kids' feet won't stop growing. So I just thought that's a cool thing to get into because it's eliminating bottles from the waste stream, and it's more efficient. It's better economics, better cost of goods, all these different things that I researched. So I decided to get into that. And very few people have draft systems at home. So the
Mm-hmm.
hospitality industry became sort of a natural fit for that.
Sure.
And and I remember also when I first started thinking about this, I thought I want to have I do want to have a home draft system. I want to have prosecco on tap.
Oh yeah.
And it was right. It was like that year that the prosecco commission or association decided that you couldn't keg prosecco. It was illegal. You had to call it Glera, which is the name of the actual grape varietal, and they just did all this
Uh-huh.
silly stuff. So
Yeah.
there goes my dream. But that's one of the sort of prime movers of me getting into the wine business was that desire to just have prosecco in in a kegerator in my basement.
We all have unique stories behind why we're motivated.
Exactly. And but so the wine on tap thing, I did some research and I just thought that the way it was being brought into Chicago from both coasts, there were two sort of big packaging co-packing companies, and
Mm-hmm.
they were shipping kegs across the country. And I thought, well, if I just ship wine in bulk here and keg it up here, that's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a lot more efficient because they're sending stainless steel kegs empty from Atlanta, Georgia, back to Napa Valley. And I just thought that's silly. So it was really a supply chain move, and so that's how we got into wine on tap, and we ended up having a very successful program at some street festivals here in Chicago, where I was approached right when I started this business by someone who's the street festivals always have a charitable beneficiary is how they get the liquor
Mm-hmm.
licenses for these things. So I was approached by a board member for one of these things who said, "Oh, I hear you just started a wine company. Would you be willing to donate 36 cases of wine for our street festival?" And I said, "No, I just started. No, I'm sorry. Thanks for asking, though."
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, hang on. And somebody had given me the idea about sangria because I
Mm.
never had an original idea in my life. Um, and they said, I mean, who wants to have a little oppressive 85-degree cup of red wine on an 85-degree day when the sun's beating down and you're trying to get refreshed? But if you had a pint glass that had ice and beautiful color and fruit
Mm-hmm.
swirling around in it, perspiration on the side of the glass, that's a
Yeah.
really cool presentation. That's something that could totally work. So I said to her, well, listen, we don't do case goods. We don't do bottles. We do kegs. So if we're
Mm-hmm.
going to make a donation, it would have to be kegs. We would come up with all the hardware and all the stuff for dispensing, and which we
Okay.
could do. But also it would have to be a sangria program because I think people would you deplete a lot more wine than those 36 cases that you did last year if you
Sure.
had sangria. So it's got to be on tap. It's got to be sangria. I'll take care of all the logistics. I'll chop all the fruit, all the stuff you need. And so we ended up doing it. And then we it was a $5,000 donation value. And I said, if we're going to donate 36 cases of wine, it would be 17 kegs of wine, which is the same volume roughly.
Sure.
And after those 17 free kegs of wine are depleted, you'd have to pay us the prorated donation value for those kegs. So 5,000 divided by 17 is
Mm-hmm.
$294 per keg, which is a lot of money for a keg of the wine that we were having.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, so they were able to get the wine for free, have no risk to make money on the front side for 17 kegs, and then
Mm-hmm.
still be able to make profit on those kegs. And we finally were able to make a little bit of money, and we ended up making
Nice.
$5,000 that weekend. And
Perfect.
it was perfect, and it was so much fun. And then we did like 3 or 4 more for really cool beneficiaries, like Old Town School of Folk Music, which is a big cultural institution here in Chicago, the Chicago History Museum, stuff like that. And that
Nice.
was just how we got our start. Another sort of eureka moment, I partnered with a guy who does draft systems because I didn't know how to
Mm-hmm.
connect a keg to a nitrogen tank because I didn't know anything.
Right.
So he was doing that for me, and then he called me one day. He goes, "Hey, listen, I'm at Lagunitas tap room here on the south side. Lagunitas, the huge brewery in California, had a production facility with a really big tap room on the south side. And he said that they're looking to bring in a wine. Would you like to sell wine to Lagunitas?" I'm like, "Yes." He's like, "When can you be here?" I'm like, "An hour and 15 minutes. I just checked it out on Waze. I can be way on the south side." So I jumped in my car, drove down with some samples, and the person at Lagunitas said, "We're looking to bring in wine. It's sort of an afterthought. We're obviously a brewery, but we've got these 3 big event spaces, and we're losing bookings because we don't have any wine." So the secretary at a law firm calls and says, "Hey, we're thinking about having our holiday party there. Tell me about the program."
And they want wine on,
they just want wine in general. And so because they've got draft systems and that's what they do as a beer company, they thought wine on tap. So I met with the guy, the buyer, the general manager, and we tasted the wine. We had a Pinot Noir from Willamette and a unoaked Chardonnay from Languedoc, France. And he tasted the wine. He's like, "Whoa, this is really good." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't sell bad wine." And he's like, "Well, listen, we're just going to call it red and white wine on our menu, but we're going to call it Pinot Noir from Willamette and Chardonnay from Languedoc, France. And we're going to put your name."
It might sound a little bit more appealing.
Well, and if you don't mind, we'd like to put the name Meta Wine on our menu. And so then I just thought, well, hey, I'm co-branding with Lagunitas, like one of the biggest craft breweries in the United States. Like, this is cool. Along the way on this entrepreneurial journey, so many things like that have happened, and so many. I just say stuff. I sometimes use another S word. Stuff just keeps coming out of the woodwork. And sometimes it's not good. Sometimes it's a pandemic. Sometimes it's an interest rate hike environment. Sometimes it's a bad president running our country. But generally, stuff just keeps coming out of the woodwork. And really, when I think about our company and what we are, we're really a platform for wine, and for others to use to create wines and enjoy wines in any way that they have reason to value, whether it's a hospitality group that wants to have an extension of its brand and have a better quality wine at a lower price with better cost of goods, or an individual customer that comes into our forthcoming tasting room and wants to come in with a group of friends and make their own little wine blend and their own labels. They can do that with graduated cylinders, a little bit of education, some about what some of the world's wine blends are, because Chicago is a big foodie town. We love to get our drink on, but most Chicagoans don't know that Bordeaux is a blend. They think it's red French wine, which it is, but they don't know the 5 varietals that it's comprised of. And Chianti's a blend, and Super Tuscan, and Rioja, and Côte d'Aron. And so we empower them with that information rather than shame them like a Somm might, another S4-letter word. And then they get to iterate through this very creative, very social, very fun experience, come up with their blend, say Walter is a left bank style Bordeaux, 67% Cabernet Sauvignon, 30% Merlot, and 3% Cab Franc. And then they can go to a draft system and automate the dispensing in those exact formulas. Go to the Cabernet Sauvignon, 750 ml and 67%, Merlot 30%, Cab Franc 3%. And so make that to formula consistently time and time again. We'll keep that data in our database. We'll have an app on the phone that's a label template. And so they can take a selfie or upload a picture of their cat or a line drawing of a French chateau. Give the wine a name, call it Mr. Boots Bordeaux, put up a label on a high quality label printer, slap it on the bottle, drop the cork in, and they become a winemaker that day. And part of the reason for that, it's not that I really set out to own a wine bar or wine shop or anything, but it's just the experience is so social media friendly. It's so earned media friendly. Here we are talking, which is kind of meta.
Exactly.
And so it's just a way for us to generate very efficient exposure of our brand in very authentic ways consistently and generate network effects based on that. And that's kind of what we're all about.
Yeah. So, kind of when you look at it from the sort of the third party perspective, it's like you've taken the whole wine industry and you said, how could we make this more accessible to everybody, from the production side of it, the consumption side of it, the purchasing, consumption in terms of actual drinking, the consumption in terms of buying. And that was, I think that's something that just makes your business just so interesting, rather than here's the bottle and you can buy it from the wine shop and go on your merry way. Like, you're including people in the actual process.
Absolutely. We put them in the driver's seat for people to consume and buy and consume wine the way that they want. And actually, one of the things, a lot of what's happened is I've just kind of followed my instinct or listened to smarter people than me, taken their ideas And then I look back at what's happened, and I look at it rather than being prescriptive, it's descriptive. But one of the things that we really do is we literally 180-degree reverse the power dynamic between the wine supplier, the company, and the wine buyer, whether it's a professional wine buyer for a hospitality group or a consumer who just wants to put a picture of their cat on the label, or their grandmother, or their home, or whatever. And our professional buyers, who, I mean, there are probably 20 people who are wine buyers in this country that know who we are, and that's fine, because they're some of the most powerful wine buyers in the United States. They tell us, you just made it so easy for me to say yes to working with you. Literally, 2 people said those exact words, verbatim, and they're huge.
You gotta love to hear that.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I mean, it was an amazing string of words for me to hear, and I pay attention, and I realized what we did was really right. It was really something
what makes you feel like you're in the right place. You're offering the right thing.
We're doing the right thing, and one of the things these buyers hate about their job is buying, because they're beholden to meet with wholesalers who have between 20 and 20,000 products to sell them, and they've got to try them the new stuff. Hey, do you want to taste some grasshopper infused vodka? No. No, why'd you just say that? I don't. I just want to buy that same stuff that I buy from you every week. I don't want to try insect anything.
Yeah.
And
I know somebody tried to get me to try grasshopper protein powder one time and make brownies out of it. I'm like, no, I don't want anything to have to do with that.
Right. No, not for me. Some people maybe, but not for me. And so, it's just very pushy. It's very annoying. So when we tee up our platform for the buyer and say, yes, you can put your logo on this, and yes, this is good wine, and yes, it's at the price that you said you asked for, because we pay attention, and we're not here to bother you. We're here to make business with you. And then they just, they, rather than us pushing the wine, they pull it. Yeah. And it's that 180-degree reversal in that power dynamic that we love to set up for our clients.
So when you're looking for clients to work with, I can see there just being so much interest in having a restaurant wanting to white label their own wine. What are you looking for in terms of the size of that business, the volume? Like, will you do it with a small restaurant, or they have to be a franchise? Like, what's the right mix for you?
Yeah. So right now we are working with some very large hospitality groups, and but they're all multi-concept, and so they might have 250 operations across the country, but they all have a different name, so they still can't take a shipping container under one name. So pallet by pallet right now is really the way that we're moving wine to these high volume groups. But when we have our tasting room set up, and I'll have to confirm the legality of what I'm about to say, so I'm not going to be breaking the law.
This is theoretical, just footnote here.
Right. Theoretically, our minimum order will be 1 bottle. And so let's say you've got an independent pizzeria around the corner, Tony's Pizza, or whatever, and he just wants to honor his grandfather, no Tony, or whatever, no Antonio, and put a picture of him when he was a young man, and he was making wine on a bottle, and just see if somebody wanted it. So he can come into our winery and he can make a super Tuscan blend, a little Sangiovese, maybe some Cabernet Sauvignon, some Merlot, iterate with that. Upload the picture on the app of his grandfather. Choose some fonts and then naming conventions and that sort of thing, and print up the label on the high quality label printer. We'll ring it up as a wholesale transaction as opposed to a retail transaction, and he can take it around the corner and see if it sells. And if it does, he can come back the next day and buy 2. And if those sell, he can come back the next week and buy a case.
Talk about the ultimate product testing,
right? No, I mean,
that's finished product that's ready to go to try out in market.
Just see if it works, if anybody cares. And so it's just, we try to enable people to have a riskless or significantly de-risked approach to custom beverage programs. So
and in the market today, with how expensive everything has gotten, I talked recently with a restaurant owner. We're talking about how do you balance creativity with expenses, and where those two have to live in harmony, and how difficult that is. So. Yeah,
there was just another podcast on Crane's Chicago Business earlier this week where they were talking about the economic benefits of restaurants having a house wine program, because people are tired of spending $22 for a glass of wine. Yeah. And if they can work out something with the wholesaler, maybe it's a closeout, or maybe it's just a volume situation, and they can get wine on the list for less than 15 or less than 10. That drives people into the restaurant. People start talking, drives volume, people coming through the door. Here in Chicago, the restaurants are still coming out of the pandemic. They did the recovery that we had anticipated. Everyone dancing in the streets happened for a little bit, but it didn't happen in a big, sustainable, meaningful way. So restaurants are trying to figure out ways to drive people into their door. And wine lovers talking about these guys are offering a great value, or they've got wine on tap, and you can buy a Cortino, which is 250 ml. It's about a glass and a half of wine, something like that, or a half carafe that's from a tap. It's just a much more economical way to offer wine. And if it's good wine, people don't care if it didn't come from a bottle. People talk about the elegant shape of the bottle. No, it's just a wine bottle. It is a very popular packaging format, very well known.
Sure.
But, so it's wine on tap is something that we love to still promote. But wine we got into the private label wine business because smart person smarter than me, I met at Provine, the big international wine fair every year in Dusseldorf, Germany, and kept on running into her. And she'd say, Walter, you've got a perfect business model to do private label wines. And I said, oh, Lisa, we don't do wine in bottles. We only do wine in kegs because I'm a tree hugger. And then, she's like, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And then she said that to me like 3 nights in a row. And I'm like, all right, listen, we got to stay in touch. She's like, well, actually, I'm going to be in Chicago next week. I'm like, oh, okay, let's meet. How about
it? Yeah.
And then we ended up having a meeting with a distributor friend of mine, and I invited her to come along with me. And he said the exact same thing to me. He's like, yeah, Walter, we really want to do a private label program with you. I'm like, oh my God, everyone's just talking about this. Now we have to do it. And that's how, long answer to your question, that's how that whole thing came up. I mean, it was doing the wine on tap at Lagunitas and then a couple other independent restaurants. And then getting into the first true private label program that we had was for a restaurant opened by Chicago Cubs former general manager or manager Joe Madden and Michelin-starred chef Tony Mantuano at a restaurant they opened up at Wrigley Field, which was just an absolute coup. And it was in that process for a tiny little company like us that the buyer said, you just made it so easy for me to say yes to working with you. She said, oh my God, I can't believe you can sell this Cabernet Sauvignon this good for this low price. You just made it so easy for me to say yes. Yeah. And that was an absolutely eureka moment. Yeah. And we just kind of run with it from there. And it's easy. The story almost writes itself. It's weird. I mean, that's just, we pride ourselves in ethics. We have almost all of our wine program. Moving forward, all of our wine programs will have a charitable component to them. Yeah. We, got a number of mottos at MetaWine. One of them is we can do well by doing good. One of the reason we were able to get that program for Joe and Tony at Wrigley Field was I donated wine to a friend of mine's benefit. And Tony Mantuano walked in the door because his chef was doing a presentation at this thing, and Tony Mantuano's got to be 8.5 feet tall. So I said, "Hey, Tony, I'm Walter. I'm the founder of MetaWine. We're a new kind of wine company in the United States, based here in Chicago. And I donated the private label wine to Between Bites, which is the event because Rachel's a friend of mine, and it's an awesome charity event." He said, "Oh wow, private label wine. That's really interesting. I just signed a contract to do a private label wine for a restaurant I'm opening at Wrigley Field with my business partner, Joe Madden. We're going to do Try Not to Suck beer. Maybe we should do Try Not to Suck wine." Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, why do you think I just came up and talked to you?
Yes, you should.
Yes. And then that all came together. So it's, like I say, just stuff keeps coming out of the woodwork. And it seems like, I've had
part of it is you have to show up, right? And it sounds so far, and all the stories you're sharing is you show up. I'll drive across town. I'll be at the meeting. Let me tell you my story.
Luck can be manufactured, and it's by getting in front of opportunities and being prepared, and being persistent both physically and time wise, and just being on top of things, and the law of large numbers says you will be successful and therefore lucky, as long as you stay on top of things. And that's what we've seen. And like I say, the pandemic was extremely hard on us. Our entire hospitality industry was shut down here in Chicago and in Illinois. Yeah. The interest rate environment off the back of that was also hard for us as a young investor-funded company. But I held on for dear life because I had to, because this thing is just so good. And I did what I could during that time as we're recapitalizing the business, but I was able to secure agreements with some of the biggest hospitality groups in the world to do private label programs that are geared for expansion. One of which, I can't name them right now, but one of which, it's our second program with them, And because of our sustainable business model, this is one of the biggest hospitality groups in the world, if not the biggest. And they've got the word sustainability plastered all over their website because it's important to them, both operationally, marketing, goodwill, all these different things. And so, you know, our sustainable way of bringing wine to market in bulk, as opposed to case goods, which a case of wine is just over 50% air between the cardboard and the glass. So when we ship in bulk, we're doubling our shipping efficiency, cutting our carbon footprint and shipping costs by more than half. And that transaction alone is enough for him to say, Walter, we can get you, once we're done at this property, we can get you into all the properties across Chicago, because that's something I get a bonus for that, for introducing sustainable programs to my company. And then we can get this across the United States and, you know, maybe elsewhere. And we have plans to develop a hub and spoke network of wineries, shipping between them in bulk, big, medium, small, into all key wine and hospitality markets across the United States. And the footprint of this company is exactly that. And so the economics of working with them justifies the economic expense of our expanding our footprint. And then we are a local wine company in each market, able to engage all the hospitality groups in that market for private label wine programs. And it's just a very efficient approach. And quite honestly, I got lucky. I don't know how it just kind of, the story kind of wrote itself.
And so I don't want to put words in your mouth, but, you know, leads to my question that I want to ask all of our guests. And, you know, what has been your recipe to revenue?
Oh, yeah. The recipe to revenue was, I mean, by thinking very creatively, very out of the box. I have no business being in this business, which is why when they asked me for 36 free cases of wine, I said no. And then I said, well, hang on, we'll figure this thing out. And we did. Yeah. We made money and they made money and it was great. And then we got a bunch of more events because the production company that was putting that on wanted to pour us at all their summertime events. Yeah. And, you know, being able to think creatively, to not fall into the trap of having a big ego. The wine industry is so full of big bloated egos and brands and marketing expense and risk and all that stuff that people want. Like, oh, I'm going to get a picture of me on my Harley. One guy told me, I'm like, dude, you're like 7 years old. You think people like that? People don't drive Harleys anymore. They don't want to see that. No, 70-year-olds driving Harleys, but you know, it's like I don't think the young people care. Yeah. And so just sticking true to our guns, where, you know, as a winery, we don't have brands per se. I mean, we've got a little logo, and actually borrowed, again, never had an original idea. When I started the company, it was right when RX Bar did their rebrand and the whole no BS thing, and they listed the ingredients, and I thought that's so cool.
Right on the front of the package. Yeah.
Yes, and no BS. And so I found out, and I read something in Crane's Chicago Business that said that their exit to Kellogg's for $400 million was based on that rebrand. And I found out that the agency that did that is actually here in Chicago.
Chicago, yeah.
And so I reached out to them, Scott and Victor, and they said, you know, we'd love to work with you, but we got an 18-month waiting list. I'm like, oh. And so, you know, I just said, all right, we'll keep in touch. I'm here. You guys are right above Bucktown Pub. Your office probably smells like popcorn. And then I got a call from them maybe 6 or 8 months later, and it was a guy working for them who said, you know what? We'd like to talk with you because we've been taking these engagements all over the United States from people based on our, you know, the national brand. And we just really kind of want to work with Chicago companies. This is going to be a lot easier for us than having to fly around and stuff. So we got on the fast track with them, and they did our logo, and they showed us maybe 6 or 8 different logos, and we came to our little 8.MW abstract configuration. Yeah, my brain exploded. And I just thought, oh my God, I love this so much. It's so simple. And that's our brand. And that's all we really care about from a branding perspective, because we're a brand for everyone else to do what they want to do with wine.
Right. Like you said earlier, you're really a wine platform.
We're a wine platform. I mean, people ask us about, you know, some fun MBA business terms. What's your customer acquisition cost? What's your CAC? What's your churn? And I say, you know, customer acquisition costs, I don't know, parking. Because I think about the time I parked my car in front of a big steakhouse here in Chicago, and I paid the app, and I went in with a sell sheet. I knew the guy wanted to buy rosé. Yeah. And we had this great rosé from Portugal. And give him the sell sheet. And he's like, oh, $84 a case, $7 a bottle. That's not bad if it's good juice. And he goes, oh, it's from Portugal. You got a leg up. I'm Brazilian. I speak Portuguese. Yeah. And so he tasted it. And he goes, whoa, this is dynamite. This wine is fantastic. I can't believe, oh my God, this is so good. And you're telling me we can put our logo on this bottle? My owners are going to love me. I'm going to get a raise and a promotion. I'm going to run the whole wine program with this whole group. You just made it so easy for me to say yes to working with you. That was the second guy who said it. And so then when you go into the restaurant, and you sit down with your friends, you made a reservation. It's a very popular steakhouse. You made a reservation 2 months in advance. And you say, hey guys, so nice to see you. It's been way too long. Who wants some appetizers? Let's get some oysters if you guys like oysters. And the server's going to say, listen, guys, if you like oysters and you like wine, you have to try it, our rosé. It pairs so perfectly with the oysters. It's from Portugal. It's from 10 kilometers in from Nazaré, the big surf capital of the world. So it's got these marine saline breezes blowing over the vines. It's got this great minerality. Nice. It's got this flavors of strawberry, a nose of roses. It's so good. We put our logo on it. I couldn't recommend a wine more highly. And the reason the server says that is because all that's true, but also because their manager trained them to say that because they crush it on margin. Their cost of goods on that wine is 10.6%, whereas about a half to a third of the rest of their glass pours on the list. So then it ends up being a high volume seller, their own brand. So they're not going to replace their wine with Whispering Angel, which don't tell anyone isn't as good, is more expensive, lower margin, and it is not their own brand. Yeah. And then based on the success of that program, so there's no churn. Based on the success of that program, then they intend to expand the number of SKUs to go from a rosé to also a white, a red, and a sparkling. And then the two properties, the two steakhouses that it was in, to go to the 20 that they now operate in Chicago. So a multiplying factor of 40x.
Yeah. So that restaurant's recipe to revenue is you guys.
Oh, yeah. And we're so proud that we can do that. Because we don't have this bloated ego and risky marketing plan that and just sticking with our guns and hacking through compliance, production, supply chain, and marketing to pass those benefits along to our customers, and yet have a really excellent economic foundation for ourselves as a company, because they want to make sure we're staying in business too, because we're selling them the best wine for the best price. Yeah. So it's just a really tidy little business model, and people. It keeps evolving because stuff just keeps coming out of the woodwork, including this morning. And so paying attention to the market, paying attention to what people want, not what I want people to want, sticking with our guns as this very efficient little platform. I think that's really the recipe that we found works. Yeah.
Excellent. And I know there's so much innovation that you're working on behind the scenes that's forthcoming. And I want people to make sure that they're following you, that they're keeping up to date with when you announce everything. So tell everybody where they can follow along and they can keep up to date.
Well, meta.wine is our website. We have also metawine.com if you can't get the muscle memory down.
If you want to go the more traditional, right?
Yeah, it's .wine. It works. Trust me. We're so meta. We're .wine. And so that's where you can find us up to date. All of our digital expressions are woefully in need of updating. And we will be working on all that stuff like pretty much now as we just kind of come back from being in zombie mode and back into life. With engaging some of the biggest hospitality groups in the world for programs, like I said about the steakhouse, that are structured for expansion. And and then stay tuned, because we will have a consumer facing aspect, which I mentioned earlier, as a tasting room where consumers can come in and make their own wine blend and their own labels and just do really fun stuff.
I love it.
Yeah, I mean, think about if you go, your friend's coming back from the Peace Corps, you haven't seen her in 5 years, it's a big welcome home party for her. You guys were best friends since you were in grade school, and you found a old little faded picture from when you're at the beach with your arms around each other, and you come in and you make a wine label, and you just some Sauvignon Blanc. You don't even need to make a blend, but you just call it Besties, and you put it in some bubbly, fun little fonts, and you bring it to the party and you give it to her, and that party just got so much more fun. Oh yeah, and you put the biggest smile on her face.
Yeah, what a great memory.
Yeah, another motto we have at Meta Wine, we've got quite a few, is at Meta Wine, we don't sell wine, we sell smiles, and wine makes that easy. And now you're smiling. And it's true.
It's a good one.
It's all about experience. It's all about bringing wine to market with joy, as opposed to, some of the way wine is perceived traditionally is that it's very arrogant and it's very persnickety and. Yeah. It's, oh, you pronounced Falangina wrong. Oh, what an embarrassment. Like, no, just say it how you want. Drink it. It's really good. Yeah. And so we don't do any of that stuff. wine, it's pretty well known. Wine has a language problem. We've got a whole lexicon that doesn't exist anywhere else. We don't say flavor. We don't even say sensory. We say organoleptic. What? Why?
Yeah.
What's the point? And so it's just we got to get rid of all that stuff. I mean, we bring
again,
wine,
making it accessible,
and just empowering people. And make a blend. There are no rules. If you like it, it's good wine. And
that's another good motto.
Yeah, it's true. And if like take a Cabernet Sauvignon and put 10% Sauvignon Blanc in it, and tell me it's not an absolute eye opener, because so the Sauvignon Blanc acts as a counterpoint to the traditional Cabernet Sauvignon flavors, gives it some more acidity, some floral notes, and it's really good. And a very traditional French winemaker said that his wife taught him that trick, and it works. So
nice.
He shouldn't be messing around like that either, but he is. And,
right.
And so,
cool.
it's just fun to do things and break the mold and do things in a non-traditional way that America woefully needs. The American wine industry woefully needs.
Yeah. And Meta Wine is at the forefront of it. So thank you, Walter, so much for joining me today. So don't forget, everybody, Recipe to Revenue is available on YouTube, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, iHeartRadio. So however you like to consume podcasts, follow us. Walter, thank you so much. And make sure you follow Meta Wine on social. Check out their website. Get in touch with Walter. Appreciate it. Thanks, Walter. I'll talk to you soon.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye.